Hello. This is a presentation for the course Assessment, Placement and Evaluation at Providence University College. And I'm doing a presentation of assessing speaking, of how to assess speaking. And you have the PowerPoint in front of you. You got your notes. And before we start, I will ask you to do a role play. So, of course, not you, but I would do it with the students that are attending this presentation. And I'm going to do a role play because a role play is a very good method of how people can assess speaking and how teachers can assess speaking, and a very popular form or a very popular method. So it's always good to do it with a role play so you can observe and watch your students interacting with other students, and of course you monitor the level of the language or the words or the speech that you students do, and you're able to assess the level or make observations how students interact with other people or how other English speakers, of course. So role play would take the first 10 minutes of my presentation, because you get a theme, you get a topic, and you will present or you will do a role play about that topic. You can choose whatever you want to do, and you will present it in front of a class. Of course, it depends on how many students this class has. So excuse me, my camera is falling down here. Okay, so you will, it will depend on how long it takes, of course, on the number of the students that are attending this course. But we are usually about 5 to 6 students or a little less. And so it will take about 10 minutes. It allows you, like I said, to observe the level, to observe the speaking capabilities, abilities of your students, the skills. And even though your students will probably speak grammatically incorrect, you can tell if your students are able to understand each other, if they're able to get their point across to their partners. And these are important skills, and the ones you should foster in your students. Okay, our slide, the first one is the first point that I want to talk about is designing speaking assessment. So of course you can't go into your class and do whatever you would like to do. So what are points, what are features that you have to consider when doing speaking assessment? Michael O'Malley has found or identified 3 purposes why learners are usually assessed. You can see at slide number 2, there is the first one is initial identification and placement. So of the students in need of a language-based program such as ESL or bilingual education. The second one is a movement from one level to another. So you assess students because you want to tell if the students have already moved with their capabilities, with their abilities to another level within the program that they're in. The third one is placement out of an ESL or bilingual program. So after assessing, you will be able to tell if they are able to move into a grade level classroom or if they still have to stay in the ESL classroom. Also, of course, you assess students because you want to determine where students are at within their program, and that of course helps to meet their needs of whatever they're for, why they are in that language course. Our second slide, slide number 3, I want to talk about prior considerations, what you have to look at or what you have to consider before choosing a speaking assessment or doing a speaking assessment, but in order to choose a good one. Before designing speaking assessments or choosing one, there has to be considered a certain number of factors that influence the assessment. First, we have you have to decide whether to focus on accuracy or fluency. So it is recommended to focus equally on fluency and accuracy. That's what the author says. Many authors have pointed out that you cannot, or it doesn't meet the students' needs accurately if you only focus on one or the other. You should focus on accuracy and fluency both. So not only one, but both. The second point is to consider which categories to use to evaluate. It is important to work with colleagues on this in order to pursue the same goal and not to focus on two different outcomes. If you're working for an ESL program or English language program, wherever, you will find that the program is not as effectful or effective if both you and your colleague or you and your other 5 colleagues are not focusing on the same goal. So you are not pursuing the same goal, then the language program will not be of much use. So it is very important to make sure that you are in the same boat with your goals. That, of course, means that you have to talk about this and to find a common goals. Common used categories are accuracy, especially for grammar, vocabulary, linguistic abilities like pronunciation, intonation, and word stress, fluency, like the ability to express ideas, and content or ideas. So this is taken from Coombe, Christine Coombe. She has found these few. The procedure of grading is the third point to consider. What procedure are you going to take for grading? Most language assessment tests will be rated by 2 raters, where one is the interlocutor and the other one is the assessor. Within the procedure, the raters have to be careful to use similar kinds of questions framed in the same way. It is, of course, most effective if you are using the same kinds of questions that you already have used in your classes, as well as you now use in your assessment, speaking assessment. The fourth point talks about deciding what type of speaking samples to take. Following characteristics have been suggested by Brown and Yule. First of all, the first characteristic is that speech has a purpose. So not just take any kind of text or any kind of role play or any kind of spoken text, but to take a part of speech that has a purpose and comes from a situation in real life. Extended chunks of speech, not only like 3 or 4 sentences, but extended chunks. Speech that is structured or organized, not take 1 or 3 or 4 parts from one text and the other 4 from the other text. That makes no sense. But that speech is structured and organized, so it will be most effective and helpful to the students. Our fourth slide looks at part B. After we have considered these few factors, we are now moving on to formal speaking assessment techniques. Techniques are there, or the most techniques are have to do with oral expression of language or oral interviews, or of course we are talking about speech, speaking and speaking assessment, so that makes only sense that it is usually assessed orally. To guarantee its validity, it has to be at least 10 to 15 minutes of length. In 1984, Canal suggested a framework for speaking tests. He believed that students performed best if tests were designed this way. So he has found a few points according to which a speaking test or a speaking assessment should take place, and in exact that order we will do this here right now. Okay, the first point that he said is important is a warm-up. It will lower students' anxiety with general information about themselves. So students will not as excited or not as anxious if you start by collecting personal information or data. So talk about their name, talk about their address, office, talk about their work and stuff like that. The second part is of course a level check. This is the part of the exam where students will, let's see, we see it on our slide. The second part is level check, where students will be assessed, and the level of the student will be determined through a series of questions or situational activities. Which means, for example, a few activities that Canal suggested were picture Q, probably,